but there was still a 6% drop in support among Democrats. Not even the liberals are all the way there. There's a 6% drop. I don't have an issue with what people do in the privacy of their own home, especially if they're not Christian. I have an issue when all of a sudden you want to...
Ruslan.
It appears that the sentiment towards the LGTV marriage is shifting. Newsweek put out this story, okay? And this is a wild story. It says Americans are becoming less accepting of LGTV relationship, according to polls. So here's the study. And I briefly touched about this, but I'm curious to see what you guys think about this. I say this is an indication what a lot of us have been sensing, that there's a shift happening, okay? And it sucks because this is going to negatively affect people that believe they've been marginalized, okay? So the number of Americans supporting LGTV relationships has dropped from 71 to 64%. That's a big drop, okay? That's almost 10 percentage points. That's 7 percentage points. This is just from a year ago, with more people thinking it is not morally acceptable, according to a Gallup poll. A change driven mostly by Republicans. I think it's interesting how they note mostly Republicans. I would be curious if they're saying that Republicans are increasing in this regard, right? Like, or have Republicans just changed their position? I don't think it's just Republicans, by the way. The survey, Gallup's annual Values and Beliefs poll, was conducted between May 1st and 24th among a random sample of 1,011 adults living in all U.S. 50 states and District of Columbia. It found that Americans were less supportive of a number of issues related to sexuality and relationships, including birth control, with 88% of Americans finding it morally acceptable this year compared to 92% in 2022, which, by the way, we haven't done birth control in a decade plus, all right? And divorce support, for which dropped from 81% to 78%. So the support for birth control dropped. The support for divorce dropped. Is there a shift happening? The fall in the number of Americans who think that LGTV relationships are morally acceptable down 7 percentage points. While from a long-term perspective, Americans' opinions on issues around LGTV rights have followed a liberal trend. In 2002, a minority, 38% of Americans found same-sex relationships acceptable. The drop in support for same-sex relationships this year has brought the U.S. back to 2019, when 64% of Americans said they were socially acceptable. So it went backwards, all right? It went backwards. This is crazy stuff. The fall, driven by Republicans, according to Gallup, while 56% of Americans identifying as Republicans found same relationships morally acceptable in 2002, only 41% do so this year. So 56 to 41, if I'm just doing basic math, that's a 15 percentage point amongst Republicans. So that means there's also some percentage points amongst liberals and Democrats as well. It is the lowest figure reported in Gallup's annual survey since 2014, when it was 39%. The decline of Republican support comes at a time when conservative forces inside the party have been pushing to limit LGTB rights across the country, such as women competing in female sports. Wrong thing to rally behind, right? And I think this is probably the core of it, is like once they got behind that, people saying, well, wait a minute, y'all believe some goofy stuff on some other things as well, right? Since the beginning of 2021, more than 20 GOP-led gender-affirming healthcare, as well as binary spaces like women-only toilets. So there's 20 different bills that are being pushed right now. A strong majority of Democrats and independents continue to support these relationships, with 79 and 73% of them finding it morally acceptable, respectfully. But there was still a 6% drop in support among Democrats. Not even the liberals are all the way there. There's a 6% drop. Okay. In 2002, 85% of Democrats were accepting of the issue. Despite the drop in approval, American support for LGTB marriage remains strong, Gallup has found. According to the poll, 71% of Americans think it should remain legal, matching the number reported last year. Once again, support for same-sex marriage was lower among Republicans at 49% compared to Democrats and independents. Most Americans have consistently supported same-sex marriage since 2002. It became law after the Supreme Court Obergefell versus Hodges decision. Hey, you want to see something kind of crazy? Over 75% of the people that watch this channel are not subscribed. Please consider subscribing and turning your bell notification on. so that you don't miss anything we have going here, right? So interesting times that we live in terms of there seemingly being a shift. I'm not really sure if it's a reflection of the zeitgeist changing. I'm not really sure if this is necessarily an indication that the country is becoming more driven towards following Jesus and more driven towards faith. I don't know if that's the case. I would probably venture off to say that when you see folks who have touted themselves as the promoters of values and virtues such as equality and quote unquote tolerance jumping out the window and getting behind wild ideas, then you start kind of, to put it in their terms, deconstructing other things you may have been okay with. So you're like, yo, I was okay with LGTV relationships, but now these same folks are pushing for stuff like biologically born men competing in women's sports. Okay, that's weird. Okay, I was for these relationships, but now I'm like, yo, they're kind of backdooring all kinds of other stuff. I was okay with this stuff, but now I'm like really reevaluating my position with the unborn and the deletion of babies. And so is it possible that people are reflecting about these things, thinking about these things more critically because they're seeing all these other things that got backdoored with it? I think a very simple example is the organization Black Lives Matter, not the sentiment, the organization. I think we have to draw that distinction. That organization was attempting to march for Black lives and to bring awareness to police brutality. But then when you actually read their website and their mission statement, you found that they were trying to disrupt the nuclear family. You found that they were pushing Transformers' rights. You found that they were about all these other things that were not congruent with the initial value proposition of, hey, we need to make reform with regards to what's happening with policing in Black neighborhoods, right? And then all of a sudden it got abolishing the police got backdoored. And when you looked at the statistics of that, you're like, wait a minute, folks in these neighborhoods don't actually want to abolish or defund the police. They actually would prefer more police presence so that there could be some form of safety. So it's like when organizations on the fringe rally behind an issue and then backdoor other issues, all of a sudden it seems to yo-yo in the opposite direction. That seems like what is happening with this issue. I don't know. But the question is, does this mean that maybe, just maybe, people are thinking more critically about the stuff getting backdoored and these bizarre agendas that seemingly have nothing to do with these issues? Are people thinking more clearly and critically and then thinking, well, goodness gracious, if there's all this weird stuff being done in the name of something good, but we know it's evil, like trying to encourage kids to, identify as whatever, right? We know that's bad. We know we shouldn't be teaching elementary school kids about this stuff, right? Now parents can't opt out of the education of this stuff, and they're only able to opt out of just the sex ed, but not the education. Okay, so people are seeing evil, and because people are seeing evil, they're saying, well, if there's evil, then there must be a God. Do you think that this is potentially America coming around on some of these issues, and could this be the segue to revival? Like, I don't have the answers, but I am curious your guys' thoughts on this, okay? Shout out to my guy, Duncan Wood. He said the polls earlier were for it because they voted with the mindset of, sure, I have no problem with it. And then now it's all in our face, TV and education. It's like this. That's a great point, Duncan. It's like this. I don't have an issue with what people do in the privacy of their own home, especially if they're not Christian. I have an issue when all of a sudden you want to do that in public all the time, right? Meaning this, if I'm at the pool with my son, and I was in Houston, we were hanging out, and I see a couple who's all over themselves and there's kids around and they're, kissing and making out and fondling themselves in the pool, and my 8-year-old is there. I'm gonna be honest with you. I can give a crap if that's the same sex couple or a heterosexual couple. I don't care. Why is this being flaunted in my face? Why is this being overtly done in a way that is done in front of children? I think that's where most people are at. I think most people are like, look, can we just not do this in public? Can we just not do this stuff? Whether it's heterosexual, I just don't want to see that stuff. I don't want to see that stuff in front of the kids. And if it's one group that's pushing this stuff in front of children, seemingly wanting to be the ones to always talk about what goes on in their bedroom in front of children, then guess what? That group is going to start getting backlash. And that seems what's happening. But I'm not sure. I'm curious to hear from you guys, though. Hey, this is a segment from our daily after party stream. Consider partnering with us online for as little as $5 a month to get access to these daily after party streams completely unedited. You'll also get access to our podcast as they are streamed live into the community before anyone else gets to see them, get to interact with our guests, get access to our private Discord server, and a discount code for our store for as little as $5 a month. Ultimately, that will help towards helping us continue contextualizing the gospel using media and podcast here on YouTube. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.